What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Way, and today we're going to talk to you about the things we thought we knew before we started traveling.
And really, in a nutshell, we're basically just telling you things that we were wrong about before we started traveling.
Which was a lot.
Alright, so if you're here, you're in for a treat of basically listening to our admission of everything that we kind of laugh at ourselves about now, that we are actually full-time travelers, things that we really just misunderstood or were completely wrong about before we started traveling. The first thing that we're going to talk about is our understanding of what we actually needed or wanted for space while we were on the road. We got really caught up in the whole van life, tiny living craze and kind of had this idea that we could make whatever work. Like, we were really into the little vans, everything compact, and we thought, we'll just get rid of a bunch of our stuff, things we don't want to get rid of, we'll just throw in storage, and we'll just make whatever work. Like, we're going to be on the road, we're going to be outside all the time, we don't need any space. And while some of that is somewhat true, a lot of it was exaggerated in our minds, I would say. We didn't really take into account that, A, smaller isn't always cheaper. We thought that the smaller vans were going to be more affordable than a rig like what we have.
They were not.
They're actually way more expensive than the rig that we have. And also, we did somewhat take into account the dogs, thinking, oh yeah, we're going to be outside with them all the time, but didn't really think about we're still having to work, pretty much Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or longer, just like anybody else. And, even though we take them on walks and adventures and stuff all the time, it's still a really small space if you're living in a van with 2 people and 2 dogs to try and make that work. So, having our ability to spread out and the dog's ability to spread out during the day is something we definitely, I don't want to say overlooked, but we were just way overconfident that we didn't need it.
Another thing related to the space issue is if you're working remotely, then Zoom calls are probably a regular staple of your life. So for us, I generally take calls in the front of the RV, whereas Krista will take calls in the back of the RV or vice versa. Pretty much just giving that buffer of sound barrier so that we're not interfering with each other's Zoom calls.
Yeah, and literally it's probably just barely enough space with what we have right now. We're basically 300 square feet, and yeah, I think we kind of just barely squeak by to not interfere with each other's work.
Absolutely. Space is limited, especially in the kitchen. Van lifing sounds fun until you see that little itty bitty fridge and freezer that comes along with it. We like to cook, and we like our full-size fridge, and just all the things that come along with that.
Our advice is just consider what your daily activities and hobbies are actually realistically going to be. Don't overestimate, just because you travel all the time does not mean that you're just going to be outside all day, every day. I mean, there's still bad weather, there's lots of things. So you have to be aware that you and whoever's coming with you on this journey is going to be in those confined quarters for sometimes longer periods of time than you might think. And even if you think you don't want a bigger rig or a smaller rig or whatever you are leaning towards, go look at the rigs that aren't what you assume that you want. Still look at every style you could get your eyes on, basically. And I don't just mean online, I mean go to the actual dealerships and stuff like that, even if you don't intend
feel yourself in the space.
Yes, and really go there and experience it. Don't just assume that whatever you're picturing in your head is what reality is going to be.
Another thing that's really important before starting on this journey is considering what items you'd like to bring with you. The proverbial, if I had one thing on a desert island, well, this is your life now, and this is what you brought, so it better be good.
But you don't want it to feel like you're on a desert island. That's kind of the whole point.
Exactly. So we went with a Class A with all the underbay storage because it felt like we could really make very little sacrifices and still live the life that we wanted to lead. And, this is, at this point, it's not just daydreaming. You've got to put this list into action, and you also have to take into account that there will be a million little things along the way that you didn't even know you needed until you needed them.
Find the space that works for you. Everyone's answer is going to be different. It's not like we're saying a Class A or a bigger rig is right for everybody. It's just what ended up working for us. And point being here that our original assumption to what we ended up deciding was right for us are two completely different things. So while there's some assumptions that you might be able to course correct before you purchase the vehicle, there might be some assumptions that you make at the beginning of the process that you'll just kind of either have to live with or, figure out how to fix it later on down the road. For us, I don't want to call this assumption a regret of ours, but I think we got really caught up in wanting to have a Class A because we wanted to drive the actual rig itself, and towing something freaked us out a little bit, which now just kind of is silly to me. But basically, I think if we had the chance to do it over again, we probably would have gone with a fifth wheel instead of a Class A. And largely that just has to do with the fact that trying to get work done on an RV engine is, I don't know a better way to say it, it's a pain in the butt. Like, it's legitimately, like, cost aside, like finding a mechanic that will work on your RV. And, once you find them, great. Now you've got to wait, like, who knows how long until they're available to work for you, because they're probably the only one in the area and everyone and their mom is getting their RV worked on. And, undoubtedly whatever breaks in your RV engine is going to happen before like Labor Day weekend, when everybody's getting their RV repairs like last minute checked and done. So point being, having an RV engine can cause a lot of headaches, and if we could have avoided that, I think it's definitely something we should have considered a little bit more.
Another difficulty with going with the Class A over a fifth wheel is you've got two engines. That's twice the probability that something will go wrong, and not to mention that with a Class A, you can't just take that to a regular mechanic, so you're really minimizing the amount of mechanics you can actually see. So once you wait that 6-month period to finally get in to see an RV mechanic, it's probably going to cost 2 or maybe 3 times as much as a regular mechanic would have cost. Whereas, even though a fifth wheel might have to see an RV shop at some point, it doesn't have engine related work associated with it. And you can really just take that fifth wheel truck anywhere at that point.
And that's not even considering that RV parts are just more expensive than regular truck or car parts, and you're going to be waiting for those parts longer as well. So all around, more expensive, more time consuming process to have an RV engine. So if we could have avoided that, we definitely would have. So the next thing that we're going to discuss is kind of hard to talk about without kind of just laughing at ourselves, I think, a little bit. It's really, I don't know how to put it into like a specific, like, this is what we misunderstood, other than that we really just didn't understand the cost and time that a renovation takes.
Vastly underestimated.
We had no idea, and like, we thought we were tracking things, but we were not accounting for everything. Like, we're not contractors. We went into this project not really knowing what to expect. To give one example, we bought our flooring, and I think just bought just enough to cover the square footage, and we didn't think about the fact that you're literally like cutting most of those, and then once you cut those floorboards, that half of the floorboard's useless. So we had to buy way more than we thought. Like, there's just all these things that when everything's new to you, that you just misunderstand. And we had no idea what we were doing when we bought an old rig and decided, let's renovate it, that'll be so fun.
Yeah, we were dead wrong. We took off a couple of days from work, had a 4-day weekend. We're like, we're gonna knock this out.
We thought we were gonna for sure get the flooring and painting done.
I think in the first weekend, with the learning curve and bumps on the head aside, I think we got half of our living room slide out done in the first weekend.
we got the whole slide. We got the couch out, and I don't know, you can go back and look.
Check out our renovation video right here.
Yeah, definitely. Whichever corner it's
one of these corners.
Yeah, it's in one of the corners. We'll also link it down in the description. We have 2 renovation videos because it took that long to renovate the RV.
Yeah, pretty much at every turn, it had us sending ourselves back to the drawing board, which equates to more money, more trips to the hardware store, and really just being prepared for anything is going to set you up for success. Because not to say we weren't successful, but we definitely could have been a little more efficient.
To add on to that, I think our biggest misconception kind of came from watching HGTV shows.
They're just bashing out
don't
walls.
fall into the trouble. like if you've watched, like even if you don't watch HGTV, if you've been watching like van renovations and like schooly renovations and stuff, like they're really cool videos and they'll give you great ideas and pieces of advice. Like I think you should watch those videos, but remember that editing and like time lapses make it feel like it goes so fast. And obviously it's like, you know that logically, but you kind of get sucked into this like, oh, like I could do that. Like that won't take that long. Like look how easy it was. They just showed it to me in 30 seconds. Like I remember like my grandparents actually getting like really stressed out and not wanting to tell us. And I think they were like telling my mom like, I don't think they're gonna get it done in time, because we had our lease like up at our apartment. Like I think
we were under the gun to get
yeah,
into
we like
it.
had to get it done because we were moving in, and so it was like, I think my grandma was like legitimately like concerned for us. Like they're not gonna make it in time. We got like all the essential things done before we moved in, but not without just a lot of help and yeah, basically our family and friends saving our butts.
Our advice is to be meticulous in your planning period to set yourself up for success in the execution. Don't just assume that you know what everything needs. Do your research and know what you need, and then buy more of it.
That being said too, you know, especially if you're doing like a renovation like what we did, or even one more drastic than what we did, you're going to come across issues that you didn't plan for, and you need to add that padding to your budget. Because like, to give one example, when we were doing the flooring, we had to remove like our bed off of the slide out, and when we did that, we realized that the slide out wasn't flush with the rest of the RV, and basically there was just like this huge gap, so we had to like go back out by insulation. We had like a couple different ideas of what we were gonna do. We ended up getting like garage door stripping and like sealing it up that way. That's, you know, that ended up not being like a massive repair that we had to do, but it's an example of how basically when you're gutting things out and you're fixing things, you might find things that need fixed along the way that you didn't anticipate. So you need to also, you know, even if you think you've accounted for everything you're planning on, you need to also account for the things that you're not planning on. And that's impossible to do, but basically...
Plan for the unplannable is our
yes.
advice.
Yes, basically just be ready to roll with the punches. And when it comes to renovating, a lot of that just comes down to just, you know, plan for more time and more money than you think you'll need, and kind of reel in your expectations a little bit.
All right, so number 4 on the list that we didn't know, but you should, is medical coverage. If you haven't thought about that yet, it's time to start thinking about it, because we thought it was going to be a whole lot easier than it was. If you are just raising your hand saying, oh, I'm just going to get Obamacare. Well, have you thought about HMOs versus PPOs?
You also call it Obamacare.
I don't know, but either way, I mean, I think the point is that it's way more complicated than we initially thought. And my recommendation would be to set aside a good chunk of time to really do your research into what you're looking for from a plan, and then what plans actually satisfy your needs and how that fits into your budget from a month-to-month basis.
So it took me probably about a week or two just to learn about what all the options were. Adam and I started moving into the RV, and basically like we had only ever had healthcare through our parents or through work. Not only is it like super expensive not getting it through work, but it's, you know, it's just, there's more options than you'd think. And when you start like going down the route of like reading about like health shares and like non-traditional healthcare, that's its own thing to learn about outside of traditional healthcare. So point being, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of BS out there too, like a lot of websites that, you know, you have to put your information into in order to get information, and then you'll be getting calls like constantly because they're trying to sell you healthcare. So you have to be really like choosy about who you talk to and like what websites you're actually like looking at in order to do your research. It's a time-consuming process, and it's a lot of headaches throughout the process. Do a lot of base research, and then try to speak with a healthcare advisor, because actually talking to somebody is super helpful, and they're going to answer questions or explain things differently than if you're just like reading an article. And you might have a lot of questions that are like really specific to you and your family's needs that you might not like necessarily find just like searching it on the internet. And also, I'm not gonna say like you shouldn't get a health share, but I will say like be leery of them. They're not traditional, and basically what I'm saying is they have no legal obligation to cover you. So you're kind of on some level going off of an honor system in a weird way. Like you could go with a health share that has really good reviews and all of that, but just keep in mind that, you'll be making monthly payments just like with regular healthcare. And when it comes time to get the coverage that you need for a medical expense,
they can deny you for any reason.
And just like any other health insurance, they will try to deny you for any reason because they don't want to pay for it. And they are under no legal obligation to do so. So it's just kind of something to be aware of if that's the route that you're looking to go. And I know that's like a really popular thing, especially that a lot of vloggers and bloggers recommend that they do. And I just kind of wanted to put that out in the air that it's a little more, it's not as cut and dry as some articles are going to make it sound. To add on to other weird things with traveling full-time, specifically with health coverage, keep in mind that you're going to need coverage in all 50 states. And possibly more than that, but basically, point being, a lot of health coverage, if you fall into the category of somebody that's like, oh, I still have a job and I still am going to be getting coverage through work, like that's great, but make sure that your coverage is going to cover you in other states, because that's not always the case, and it's not really something they advertise. Like, something you will have to like directly like speak with your insurance and get like a direct answer about, like, if you're in another state, will you still be covered the same way as if you were in your domicile state? So yeah, just keep that in mind as well.
You really want to be thoughtful about your health because it will be important to your continued success as a full-time RVer.
We're down to our last assumption that we're going to be discussing in this video, and it was kind of just, I don't know if it was necessarily an assumption other than just maybe we had no idea how far out RV parks get booked. We kind of had this vision, I think, of traveling full-time as like, we would just like pick a place,
we're gonna go there,
make a couple phone calls, and we'll just go, and it'll be so amazing, and we'll just we'll fly by the seat of our pants, and we'll just be like hippies on the road, and nobody will know where we are. Like,
if you've ever gone RVing before, you know that most RV reservations book out like first day of spring.
We didn't do that beforehand.
We did not.
So we had no idea. We had no comparison. And it was a very naive assumption of us. And I don't even think it's like one that we like discussed. I think we just kind of both like visualized it in our heads and just like, Anyway, so point being, a lot of RV parks are going to book out way farther in advance than you might think. You have to find this kind of sweet spot, I feel like, when you're full-timing, where you're not booking out so far ahead that, your plans might change or something might go wrong and, that reservation ends up not being what you want to do. And now you have to like still pay half of it or all of it or whatever it is. But you also don't want to wait too long to the point where when you're calling everywhere, nothing's available. And, are you not only getting your first option, but you're not even getting like your first, second, third, or fourth, or fifth option.
20th.
Yes. And we've been in that situation quite a bit, honestly. I don't even know if this is necessarily something we've like fixed in our time traveling. It's just something we're aware of now.
Everywhere is different. The more populated cities are probably going to be harder to find a spot because more people want to be near them. We got really discouraged early on because when we first moved into the RV, we were living local to the Denver area. And man, if you've ever tried to book local to the Denver area, it is near impossible for a 10-year-old rig with age under 55. There's a ton of compounding variables wherever you might go, but just know that there are options out there if you're just willing to maybe go a half hour outside of town, or just be creative with how you're planning to book out these reservations.
Try to educate yourself on an area even if you're not ready to book it, so that you kind of know what to expect and how far out you might need to start actually planning that.
We kind of have a 2-month runway ahead of us at any given time where we know where we're going to be staying for those next 2 months. Anything beyond that, and we kind of figure our plans might change, but the good thing about our flexibility,
we are still a little bit hippies.
We're pretty flexible in, when we wanted to come to Atlanta, we just stayed 2 hours outside of the city, like she said. Or, generally we're not staying in the city because that's not really a desirable place to bring your RV anyhow. So just kind of find that sweet spot between the time in advance and where with the specific requirements that you've set out for yourself.
I think we fall on the more flexible end of the spectrum. We're very like, oh, if we can't book that city, we'll find this like neighboring one and we'll just like go check it out one weekend or something. Not everybody's like that, and that's totally fine. I think the point is just, know what your expectations are, and whatever they are, that's fine, but just plan according to them. So if you have like high hopes to stay really close to your destinations and like really spend all your time there, then just know that you're gonna have to be planning farther in advance to do those things.
All right, guys. That's our top 5 things that we wish we would have known before we started. We appreciate you sticking through with us this far.
Top 5 things that we were wrong about.
We're always wrong. We continue to be wrong. We'll just update this list as we continue to go, and feel free to drop anything in the comments that we left out or experiences that you've had, because we love building that community and learning from you guys. And, as always,
thanks for traveling with us.
We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.